Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's program, because today on the show, you might have guessed, well, yeah, we have Ralph Bond. It's Friday. It's that time of the week. And boy, howdy, what a week. Not in tech. Tech has been actually pretty fun. There's of course, we talked about the new Apple book that, I think a lot of people were big fans of some of the old iMac or the MacBook Pros and stuff like that. New, cheaper MacBook. We like that. There was some new Google phones. There was, a lot of fun tech news. It's been great in tech, but all the other news has been a little dour, a little dreary. So, with that being said, we, of course, bring you our segment with Ralph Bond, and he is our science and tech trends correspondent, and this segment is all about the tech stories that we don't cover throughout the week that are very fun, interesting. You should definitely know about them. It's just we don't really cover them except for this segment, and we really appreciate Ralph coming on to talk about these. So if you are still a little fuzzy on the details, Ralph will be on in just a moment to give you even more detail. But before that, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, everything and anything that Computer America does, you can find at our website. So go ahead, go there, and you can find everything, including the show notes, which by the time that you hear this, the show notes will be live, and you can, of course, either follow along, find out more, or just find some of those resources that we provide for you. That if you want to follow up, hey, computeramerica.com. With all that being said, let's go ahead, bring Ralph on, and just have fun with it. So once again, Science and Tech Trends correspondent joins us every Friday. And Ralph, welcome back onto the program.
Hey, always great to be here. And as you were saying, this is a week where we really need to be uplifted by positive news. And friends, if you're new to the show, welcome, of course. Let me explain what we do. Ben and I do each Friday. What we do is we highlight 4 articles that show us key trends and developments in all things science and tech, including, of course, almost every story has artificial intelligence, but we look at robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, agricultural technology, construction technology, space research, physics, on and on and on. But most important of all, and boy, do we need this week, we're going to give you hope for a better future thanks to amazing breakthroughs happening every single day in the world of science and technology.
Absolutely. And I think story number 1, this reminds me a lot of my high school. This is what my engineering teacher in 9th grade said to us, was the headline of this article. So Ralph, let's talk about mini brains learning engineering problems. That is what it is. So yeah.
Yes, this is a great example of a key trend, Ben, you and I have been seeing over and over again, organoids. So let's get into this. This comes from sciencealert.com. Headline, scientists grew mini brains. And we're going to explain a little bit about this term, mini brains. But scientists grew mini brains, then trained them to solve an engineering problem. And by the way, we're going to have another related story that just came out this week that we'll talk about toward the end of covering this story. But let's get into this. So scientists at the University of California in Santa Cruz have created lab-grown mini brains, actually brain organoids, and then trained them to perform a classic engineering control task. Wow. I mean, we're seeing this more and more and more where people are taking neuron organoids or brain organoids and having them do things. This is just an amazing trend. Brain organoids, by the way, are already used to study development and disease, but using them for computation, that's the newness. That's the breakthrough here in this story. And in the show notes, Ben mentioned the show notes, folks. Very important. Come out to the show and get them, because what I do is I insert additional information that helps me understand certain things that the articles just assume you know. And starting this week, I'm kind of highlighting the stuff that I insert with blue text in the show notes so you can know immediately what's from the article and what's from me adding stuff in. And I have a whole little tutorial here insert about what are mini brains. Well, mini brains is sort of popular slang, if you want to call it, for what these things are. It's, as the notes say, it's broadly acceptable to call them mini brains, but only in a loose metaphorical sense. The scientific term is brain organoids, and that term is more accurate for what they actually are. And you can come to the show notes and read more about what this is all about. But if you want to be really cool and make scientists appreciate you, say brain organoids, not mini brains. Okay.
I would just take a shot in the dark because, I could probably read your blue text real quick, but I'm guessing it's not that it does everything that a brain does, just mini. It's
correct.
It acts like a brain in the ways that it does exist. So
it has certain brain functions.
Yeah.
That have been just sort of generalized as mini brains, because mini brains is much more exciting, a headline, than brain organoids. So back to the story. So what this team did is they grew brain organoids from human stem cells, forming small clusters of neurons capable of electrical activity. So small clusters of neurons capable of electrical activity is not a full brain, to your point, Ben. And these organoids were then connected to a hybrid biocomputer system, allowing them to receive input signals and produce output signals. And I have a side note again inserted to help explain what is a biocomputer. You can read that in the show notes if you want to. And the goal of the experiment was to test whether biological neural tissue, the brain organoids, could learn patterns the way artificial neural networks do. So you have computers, all electronics, that imitate how the brain works. That's a neural network-based computer. And the test here was, could we take neural tissue, brain organoids, and have them learn patterns the way an artificial neural network would do? So that's the experiment.
Seems like we're going from our brains and studying how our brains work, and then someone came up with artificial intelligence, and that was a neural network, and we try to mimic the brain, and now we're going back to organoids, being like, can we train our brain to can we train our brain-like thing to be trained like our brain-like thing to be trained like our brain? And it seems like we're all coming full circle to make it more efficient.
Well, the fascinating part, maybe for some people spooky, I guess you could say, is that the road we're on is to a hybrid computing situation where you would have these brain organoids collaborating with a traditional computer system of sorts, hybrid. And this is the thing that's scary and kind of amazing and cool all at the same time. It's getting closer and closer to Skynet, I think. I don't know.
It's getting to that classic science fiction, where you have like a floating brain in a tube, or kind of like a Futurama kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes. So going back to the story here, here's the engineering problem these brain organoids learned how to solve. The organoids were trained on the cart-pole problem, a classic benchmark in control engineering and AI. Cart-pole problem. Well, that's interesting. In this task, the system must keep a pole balanced upright on a moving cart by making continuous adjustments. It's a balancing act, right? And the organoids learn to recognize patterns and adjust outputs to stabilize the pole, demonstrating adaptive learning. Oh my gosh, brain organoids learning to do adaptive learning. Oh my gosh. And so why does this matter? Well, it shows that biological neural networks can be integrated with digital systems to perform computational tasks. The point I just made about we're on the path to hybrid. The hybrid approach could lead to more energy efficient computing, new ways to study learning and memory, and platforms for testing neurological therapies. Ding, that's pretty important. But as we kind of suggested here a moment ago, it also raises early ethical questions about the future of biological computing and the boundaries of organoid research. And the experiment suggests that biological systems may excel at tasks involving pattern recognition, adaptation, and real-time control, areas where traditional AI can be very resource intensive. So you think to yourself, what's the motivation here? Interestingly enough, a hybrid of brain organoids with traditional AI computing gear could equal something that's much less resource intensive, energy consuming, and so on. Wow.
Yeah. So, and when they're watching the video portion,
There you go.
This is from a different article, but it shows, kind of the visual of the cart pole problem. And it shows, the one on the left is the cart pole problem being failed, where the pole is just swinging wildly, and the one on the right where the pole is balanced, well, using it. And, it kind of goes to show that, at least in this article that I found, Ralph, it was like, one took 700 attempts to kind of figure out the right formula to make it stable, and the other one took like 150 attempts to make it stable. So that's where the efficiency comes in. Is solving, that's how you kind of benchmark. And that's the part I was curious about. It's like, how is something a benchmark? And I guess it's how quickly can it come up with a solution to this very simple seeming problem. So.
Or can it come up with a solution?
Yes.
Could the organoids do this? And in fact, they could. And folks, if you're listening to us as a podcast, and I can't encourage you enough to come out and get the video link, but anyway, if you're listening to us a podcast, the pole cart test, imagine holding your palm out flat in front of your face, but you have a stick coming up from your palm, and you have to move your hand to try to keep the stick from flopping over. That's the pole cart test.
Imagine like trying to balance a ruler in your palm. The exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so in the show notes, though, what I found just breaking this week, which I thought was really amazing, maybe you heard about this already, Ben, related to this story, is this headline from ZME Science and many other outlets, because this was very much picked up in the press. Headline, 200,000 living human brain cells or organoids just learned to play Doom, and they played the old classic
How
Doom
did they get my gameplay? That is not
There
fair.
you go. And this is just the start of it, the headline says. And I'll just read a little passage here, and you can come out to the show notes, get the link, and read the full article. Researchers at Australian startup called Cortical Labs have taught human neurons grown on a chip to play the classic Doom game, the run-around shooting game, right? In 2021, they had already used 800,000 neurons to play Pong, the very simple game that goes way, way back. Old guys like me remember that. And now with 4 times fewer brain cells, they can play a much more complicated game, the original classic Doom. So something to check out. Really, really interesting.
Yep. Yeah. And according to your notes, only took about a week. And it was, that's very interesting because Pong, much simpler than Doom.
Yes, much.
And they're able to do it with even less. Very impressive, and just really goes to show the potential, I guess, learning capabilities of even just small segments of our brain. So,
right.
And, Rafa, like, honestly, like, if we had not been doing these shows over, so long and talking about brain organoids and all these different things, like I would think that's not really an avenue worth pursuing. But over time, I'm starting to realize that, yes, this is very much research. No, you're not going to go buy, an Intel brain inside, kind of processor, but someone out there could come up with a technology that could really advance, a lot of the technology that we use. Like, you're not going to have this, but someone's going to come up with a very cool technology to utilize this.
Yeah, it is a very interesting part of what's going on in computing science, to say the least.
One that was not on my radar before, but is surely now. So story number 1, story number 2. And this one is something a little bit more low tech than the human brain, but it can have very big implications for those who drive without a brain. And this is, could really, I guess, because like I'll be honest, a a couple of months ago, we bought a not a Roomba, because Roomba's going out of business, and forget Roomba, but a robotic vacuum, and it has Lidar. It can map the house. Seeing the capability like in your phone and see what it's mapping, Lidar is so accurate and so impressive, and it's still pretty expensive. It was a pretty expensive little vacuum robot, but the capabilities of Lidar always amaze me. It's just the price point hasn't really been there. And, you want it in places, it's hard to get it in places. Story number 2 could see the technology come to more places, and that, I think, is just great.
Absolutely. So to Ben's point, story number 2 comes from IEEE Spectrum, very, very respected, very geeky outlet. But the headline here is sub $200 Lidar could reshuffle automobiles' sensor economics. And the subhead, Microvision, that's a company, says its sensor could one day break the $100 barrier. We're going to explain all this as we get into this. So the key trend to watch that this story is all about is solid state Lidar, and we'll explain what that's all about. So the article highlights a major shift in automotive sensor economics, the development of highly affordable solid state Lidar. Now, reminder, Lidar systems emit pulsed laser light toward a surface or object. A sensor then detects the returning light. Because light travels at a known speed, the system can calculate distance with high precision. So if you've seen those autonomous taxis running around your big cities, and on the top you might see something whirling around, that's a Lidar unit. So historically, though, as the article points out, Lidar has been a prohibitively expensive technology, costing thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the level of sophistication, and thus, as a result, reserved for premium vehicles and specialized autonomous fleets like the taxis, right?
So, yeah, and just to even throw a little bit more into that, that's why Tesla was pursuing a different technology for their self-driving cars, and why it was so kind of frowned upon the industry is because they were using cameras to kind of stitch a view together, and then using machine learning to look at the camera feed. And Ralph, that's why you see these videos of Teslas just nailing luckily mostly mannequin kids that jump from behind cars, is because the camera can't see behind cars, whereas these lidars that you're talking about, they can see beyond and behind obstacles, whereas cameras obviously can only see line of sight. And it's a much better, safer technology. It's just cameras, to Tesla's point, is much cheaper to roll out.
Well, yeah, exactly right. And then going back to the article here, it talks about, well, why solid state? Well, unlike traditional Lidar that relies on spinning mechanical parts, and again, you may have seen these taxis with the little whirl around thing going on top. So instead of relying on spinning mechanical parts, solid state Lidar has no moving pieces. This makes the sensors drastically cheaper to manufacture at scale, significantly more compact, and highly durable. That's a key point, highly durable against road vibrations. And now companies like Microvision, which is a solid-state sensor technology company located in Redmond, Washington, are developing solid-state Lidar units targeting a mass production price point of under $200, and their long-term goal is getting it under $100 per sensors. Wow, that's just a game changer.
it really does seem to bring the technology to a point where, you're not putting them on, every little webcam that you have, but for cars, it makes complete sense.
I agree. And here in the article, they go into some of the key technological details. The article highlights Microvision's Movia, M-O-V-I-A-S sensor, a corner-mounted, fully solid-state Lidar unit. When they say corner-mounted, think of the car as a rectangle, and so at the corners you would have, each corner would have one of these sensors. So how does it work? I love this. This is really geeky. It utilizes 905 nanometer laser pulses, that's 905 billionths of a meter, by the way, and time of flight measurements to create high definition 3D point clouds of the vehicle's surrounding. If you're not familiar with point clouds, look that up. You'll get immediately images that'll explain what that is. Now, there's a trade-off. Hardware cost versus software complexity. Because these low-cost solid-state sensors have a narrower field of view compared to expensive roof-mounted spinning LiDARs we've been talking about, a vehicle will need 3 to 4 sensors distributed around its perimeter to achieve full situational awareness. But you look at the cost, wow, and you look at solid-state being more rugged for road conditions, I think they're going to get something really going here with this technology.
It really solves a lot of problems that the industry has, like the roof mounted spinning ones that you keep mentioning. Those are the best by far. It's just again the cost, and the cost means everything for mass adoption. But just even if you have to pay for 3 or 4, and it's just another sensor. And Ralph, I kind of like how, for the end user, it's not like it really changes the body of the car, or, you have to add another thing. It's not like, another, let's say like a side mirror that's sticking out of your car. It's built in, to the end user, it just looks like another bump on the car. But the capabilities are just actually good compared to, again, things like cameras that just will never have that situational awareness that they keep talking about. It's needed, and this technology is certainly something I have not heard of before, but solid state and LiDAR seem to be a really good match for the road. Yep. So looking forward to that. I think every car is eventually going to have this, Ralph. Like, this turns cars from, like, some of these sensors that do like auto braking for you and lane keep and stuff like that. This makes cars like able to predict, okay, you are going to hit this curb, or you are going to hit this woman pushing this baby carriage or something. And I say that because they had, the video up on their site that you can go to Computer America, find the link, and watch the videos. We were showing them while we were doing the article. But yeah, it situational awareness means so much for cars because it means less death. And we like less death here on Computer America. Controversial, but here we are. Story number 2, Ralph. Story number 3. And let's talk about, once again, adapting nature to technology. And this one is, I think, as low tech as we've kind of seen, but at the same time, seems very technical at the same time.
This was fun. This had a headline I couldn't resist that comes from SciTechDaily.com. Headline: Magical Marvel. Tiny fairy-like robot flies by the power of wind and light. And the subhead is: the fairy robot mimics dandelion seeds for artificial pollination. And you really do need to come out to the show, computeramerica.com, get the show notes, look at the images and all the links and so forth to understand what we're talking about. But if you picture in your mind what a dandelion seed looks like, it's the little fluffy, fibrous-like material. And then there's a little cord, if you want to call it that, the seed. And then it's able just to float on the wind and randomly impact your lawn and put weeds and all that good stuff. So that's what we're talking about, imitating that natural technique of being able to fly through the air and dispense or do something. In the case of a dandelion seed, is to create another dandelion. In the case of what we're going to talk about, is helping to pollinate agricultural plants. So let's get into this story. The loss of pollinators, such as bees, which is tragic, by the way, is a huge challenge for global biodiversity and affects humanity by causing problems in food production. This is a serious problem these days, folks, and unfortunately related to climate change. Oh, God. Anyway, I hope I'm going to say this right, because it's in a university in Finland, at the Tampere University in Finland, researchers have now developed the first passively flying robot equipped with artificial muscle. So the first passively flying robot equipped with artificial muscle. Now, remember, a dandelion seed is passive. It detaches from the plant, and it just, wherever the wind takes it, if it lands, it may be successful and cause a plant, or it may just go away. That's what we're talking about. The goal of the research is to see if this, and this article keeps calling it artificial fairy. They mean to say this little kind of delicate flying thing. It actually looks more like a dandelion seed. to see if this artificial fairy could be utilized for pollination. And note, the university in question in Finland is the second largest urban area in the country, and it's a major hub for technology, research, and education. And the university itself is one of Finland's largest. So this is a pretty interesting outfit. The development of stimuli responsive polymers has brought about a wealth of material related opportunities for next generation small scale wirelessly controlled soft bodied robots. So in the field of robotics, there's been a lot of research and work, as you know, Ben, we've covered this before, with polymers that can respond to certain external stimuli. And for some time now, engineers have known how to use these materials to make small robots that can walk, swim, and jump. But here's the key. So far, no one has been able to make them fly. That's what makes this story kind of a breakthrough in this particular field of robotics.
Yep. And for those who are looking at the picture, they have a little diagram here that shows, the bottom one here, light off, where everything's kind of closed and compact, and it's not really doing much. And then it's, I guess, light reactive, where everything kind of opens up, and that's where they keep calling it a fairy, and it looks fairly, I guess, ethereal in its pictures.
Yes.
But it just kind of expands and creates more surface area. So that's really as simple as and again, we mentioned this a couple of times. Expand your idea of what a robot is, because this is technically a robot. It's not gonna, shoot a Johnny is Alive movie. So yeah,
exactly right. Yeah, and that's a very good point you raised, because you and I know from years of covering this stuff, the definition of a robot is pretty wide, pretty embracing. Most normal people would think, oh, a robot, it's like those little humanoid things I see jumping around and doing karate and what. No, the world of robotics is so far flung and so embracing of so many different approaches. But going back to the story here, researchers of the Light Robots group at Tampere University in Finland are now researching how to make smart material fly. Smart material fly. Smart is a little bit of a stretch, I'll explain. They have developed a polymer assembly robot that flies by wind and is controlled by light. A lead researcher on this team said, quote, superior to its natural counterparts, meaning the dandelion seed, this artificial seed is equipped with a soft actuator. The actuator is made of light-responsive liquid crystalline elastomer, which induces opening or closing actions of the bristles upon visible light excitation. The fairy flying robot can be powered and controlled by a light source, such as a laser beam, or LED light. Okay. Yeah, pretty amazing.
I thought it would be kind of sunlight reactive, but I guess they're going with laser beam and LED, I guess, to kind of control when to activate them.
Yeah, that part makes me wonder about its feasibility for introduction into, say, a farm field or something. How do you deal with this? But anyway,
I mean, just a couple weeks ago, we did that story about the lasers that were zapping weeds in a farm field. So I'm not saying the two are at all related, but. Lasers, seems like farming and lasers actually have a strong connection, and I never knew.
Yeah, there you go. And the artificial, they keep calling it a fairy or flying robot, includes several biomimetic features, bioimitation features, right? Because of its high porosity of 0.95 and a porosity of 0.95 means the material is 95% empty space and only 5% solid. So that's how light this thing is. And of course, lightweight at 1.2 milligrams structure, it can easily float in the air directed by the wind. To my way of thinking, Ben, is instead of controlling it with light or a laser beam or something like that, just release these puppies into the wind, just like a dandelion seed, and hopefully they'll do their job. But again, that remains to be seen.
I'm guessing when they're closed, their surface area is much smaller, and they're actually, I guess, kind of, you can handle them, control them, put them in places, because I guess otherwise they'd just be flying everywhere. It'd be like trying to spread, not asbestos. It'd be like trying to spread asbestos. It just kind of flies everywhere. But I guess they can control when it will be affected by the wind.
Exactly. Exactly right. And in the show notes, I insert a little definition of biomimetic. If you want to be cool, we've been saying inspired by nature, which is completely accurate. But if you want to be super cool, biomimetic means something that imitates or is inspired by nature's designs, materials, or processes. It's used to describe technology, structures, or products that copy how living organisms solve problems. And again, and again, and again, I stress this, and you do too, Ben. This is a key trend in certain fields of science and in robotics.
So mini brains are biomimetic. Yes. Kind of, yes. I guess.
This means that, going back to the story here, this means that light can be used to change the shape of the tiny dandelion seed-like structure. So when they say it's smart, that's not smart in the way I would normally think of it. The flying robot can adapt manually to wind direction and force by changing its shape. A light beam can also be used to control the takeoff and landing actions of this polymer assembly. So maybe what we're talking about, come to think of it in fairness, is initially you launch these puppies with light or a laser thing, and then once they're in the air, maybe they do just go off and hopefully randomly pollinate what you're trying to pollinate. To wrap this up, in the future, millions of artificial dandelion seed-like flying robots carrying pollen could be dispersed freely by natural winds and then steered by light towards specific areas with trees awaiting pollination. So, wow, talk about techie and interesting agricultural tech.
Kind of a bummer that, we have to start looking at solutions that traditionally pollinators were doing, for free and all the time. But to kind of give everything a boost, to keep everything kind of running, Ralph, the first thing that comes to mind is plastic, but at the same time, I'm like, we've also covered many stories in the show about different types of plastic that are biodegradable, that are made of like seaweed and stuff.
Right.
So I think there's a solution here, Ralph, that at least for, maybe like new plantations, new planting, because there are vast areas that, we've logged or destroyed or otherwise, there is not the, I guess, pollinators to support an ecosystem, Ralph. Maybe something like this could kick off that ecosystem and allow for, a more healthy environment from the get-go. So, yeah. Very cool story. And a fairy-like robot, but I will say that it is very is a very cool looking robot that we've seen on the show. Yes. Very, very fun. So there you go. Story number 3. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show here with story number 4. If you are following along, skip on down. And we're going to talk about, curing Alzheimer's, always something that we are looking at. And, again, something curing these impossible diseases ever since technologies like CRISPR and organoids that let us study things in different stages and let us really understand what's going on. All huge improvements in the last 10 years, 15 years, massive improvements. But Ralph, you know what's better than curing these diseases is never getting them in the first place.
Exactly.
So let's talk about story number 4.
Yeah, as horrifying as Alzheimer's disease is, as you know, and we've been covering this now for a number of years, it seems like every week there's some advancements in either detecting early or treating or preventing or whatever this dreadful, dreadful disease. So this is why this story really caught my eye. And by the way, folks, if you are new to the show, typically speaking, the 4th story that we cover of the set of 4 each week is usually medical technology. This one comes from the University of California, Los Angeles, their newsroom, so UCLA. Headline: Scientists uncover why some brain cells resist Alzheimer's disease. And the subhead is: Study identifies cellular defense system that protects neurons from toxic tau proteins, opening the door to new treatments. And I'm going to forewarn everybody, this is very geeky stuff. Do I fully understand it? Heck no, but we'll do our best to try to crunch this down in the most friendly way we can. But we're going to be talking about tau, T-A-U proteins. So this is a key element of the story. So let's get into this. New research by the UCLA Health and UC San Francisco, so it's actually a collaboration of 2 institutions in California, has uncovered why certain brain cells are more resilient than others to the buildup of a toxic protein that is a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, potentially leading to new targets for therapies or treatments. Wow, this is so great. The study, published in the journal Cell, you want to get a geeky outlet, check out the journal Cell. It's amazing. So they used a novel CRISPR-based genetic screening approach on lab-grown human brain cells, organoids, to determine the cellular machinery that controls the accumulation of tau protein in the brain. I warned you, this is geeky.
Yeah, I mean, as strange, and we're going to hear terms and see things that in this article that we haven't seen before. But Ralph, I guess that is the hard part about all this, is that maybe not you, maybe not me, but someone has to understand exactly why, how, where, and when all of these things happen to really get a handle on how to treat this disease. And it's you can tell instantly it's very complicated.
It is. It's very complicated. Now, a little side note that I will read in this case: tau, T-A-U protein, is a microtubule associated protein found mainly inside neurons, where it helps stabilize the cell's internal structure framework. Its normal role, key here, normal role, is essential for healthy neuronal function. But when tau becomes chemically altered, it can contribute to neurodegenerative diseases. So that's the key here. They're looking at, what happens when tau protein gets chemically altered? So these proteins can build up as toxic clumps. If things go wrong, they can build up as toxic clumps in the brain, killing neurons and leading to neurodegenerative diseases such as frontotemporal dementia and, of course, Alzheimer's disease. And tau is the most common protein that aggregates in neurodegeneration diseases. However, researchers had not determined why types of neurons are affected more than others. So the question was, why are some neurons in the brain more susceptible to this tau issue than others? What's going on there?
Yeah, and I was reading ahead just a little bit, and I saw the word crispy, and I was like, oh, okay, crispy. It's CRISPR-I. Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
but yeah,
that's
no,
right.
It's makes sense. Why is this happening in some and not than others? And that has led to a lot of breakthroughs in vaccines and stuff like that. So pretty much applying the same thing to Alzheimer's. And
right,
makes sense.
Exactly. So the UCLA and University of California, San Francisco team used lab-grown neurons and the CRISPR with a little lowercase I at the end. So a little different here. Gene editing tool to systematically determine which genes and cell processes affect how tau proteins build up. Oh, I told you this was geeky. Little side note here. I have an insert here that explains what CRISPR-I, CRISPR all caps, and then lowercase I glued together. CRISPR-I is a gene silencing tool. Oh, what? A gene silencing tool that uses a modified CRISPR system to turn genes off without cutting DNA. It's part of the broader CRISPR toolkit, but it works very differently from the well-known CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing method. Oh, sure. I knew that right away.
of the more well-known CRISPR-Cas9.
Yes, you bet.
Yes, of course.
You bet. I knew it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So the work identified a protein complex called, get ready for this, CRL5-SOCS4 that marks tau for degradation. Okay, the findings, to wrap this up, because I know this has been like melting my brain, the findings suggest that strengthening, this natural defense mechanism could represent a new therapeutic strategy for neurodegenerative diseases, which affect millions of Americans, but currently have no effective treatment. So again, I apologize for how deep and geeky this was. And to stress how geeky this is, if you go look at the research paper and dig deeper into this, your brain will just melt and roll off your shoulders.
No, but at its core, it's doing something that we've done with vaccines, finding out why some people are immune and others aren't. And then it's doing what we've been trying to do with cancer a little bit, which is how do we get the body to see cancer cells and have the body take care of, destroying them and, having your body cure cancer. Ralph, it seems like and that is oversimplifying it to an extreme, but it is generally what I can gather. The same process is just trying to get the body to, more accurately take care of its own, problems. And that is probably the best cure that you can have, is when your body just cleans it out itself. So there you go. And everyone out there, keep doing your regular, Alzheimer prevention and treatment that you should be doing. But there's hope on the horizon that this could really help a lot of people. So there you go. Story number 4. And Ralph, that means that we're about done for today. But I will say, if you have been following along, you may notice there's a lot more text for us being done. And there's still like another, 5 pages. Ralph, why don't we go ahead and give the nice folks the honorable mentions? These are stories that are just as good, great researchers. If you're out there listening to this and you made it to the honorable mentions, it just means that we ran out of time. It does not mean that you are less. And everyone out there, you should go out to Computer America, check out the show notes, and go to the bottom and see these honorable mentions. Check them out yourselves. But Ralph's going to at least tease the headlines so that you know what to look for. So, Ralph.
There you go. Our first honorable mention of 4 comes from PennState, their news web outlet. Headline: New plastic material could solve energy storage challenge. Researchers report. Subhead: Novel polymer alloy material made of commercially available plastics demonstrates unprecedented performance at high temperatures. Very geeky, but very interesting. And by the way, the South Koreans are really into making plastics that can withstand high temperatures as well. Let's see. The next one comes from ZME Science. Why Perovskite LEDs might soon replace every light in your home. Oh, Perovskite LEDs.
Perovskite makes its debut again here on the show.
Yeah. So, isn't that something? Making LED light bulbs out of perovskite. So the subhead is cheaper, brighter, and greener. Perovskite LEDs could change lighting if they last long enough. So this is early research, but promising. Pretty interesting stuff. So check that out. Our next one, our third honorable mention, comes from interestingengineering.com. Headline: Neither classical nor quantum. This computer lets light solve complex calculations built from ordinary components. That's a key here. This light-driven machine stays stable for hours while tackling problems with many possibilities. Early research, and one of the key trends Ben and I have been talking about over the last year or more is light, using light to do computations instead of the traditional binary, circuits that we're very familiar with. So this is a great article. Check it out. Very, very interesting. And our last honorable mention for this week is from techexplorer.com. A new flexible AI chip for smart wearables is thinner than a human hair. Wow. Miniaturization is, of course, another one of the driving forces in computational research today.
Yeah, just make it smaller, better, more efficient, all of that. And hey, it'll lead to just faster, better, and everything that we expect from our, from our ever increasing technology and all that good stuff. So Ralph, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all these. Ladies and gentlemen, the honorable mentions, always worth going out to the site, checking those out. And also anything that you didn't really catch or you thought that we didn't cover well enough, well, you can go on out and find the sources for everything that we just showed. So everyone, I want to thank you so much for tuning into the program. Thank you for joining us, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. You have a great Friday. That was very uplifting. That was a lot of great news, and we'll be back next Friday with even more. So Ralph, I want to thank you again. Everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. And until next week, have a good one. Catch you next time. Bye, everyone.